My wife. She would not allow me to contact my parents, just for various reasons, but the main thing I wanted was, hey, I just need to borrow some money from them for our son's treatment. She wouldn't let me do it. But then I found out she was sneaking out late at night to go somewhere disgusting, just to make some extra money, and you won't believe what I found out she was doing. I hate being wrong about things. It's because I'm rarely wrong. All my life, I've made decisions based on logic. Every choice I've ever made has led me to this point. Because of my choices, I'm happily married and have a 3-year-old son. Despite what people have tried to tell me about my marriage, I've not listened to them. The people who have opposed my marriage the most are my parents. They've never felt that my wife is good enough for them. The only reason that they don't like her is because she was once married. Yep. They feel that just because she was once married, she could not be a good wife. They assume that she had some flaws that led her to get divorced, and that's not the case. My wife had a difficult marriage, and she decided to end it. I'll always respect her for that. If she had not ended that marriage, I would have never met her. I can't imagine my life without her. She's smart, kind, caring, empathetic. She makes up for what I lack, which is being more emotional. I'm the more practical of us, while she's the more sentimental. It's a good balance and has led us to have a very happy marriage. When we found out that her son was sick, my wife broke down. She was deeply disheartened and depressed for days. She would not eat or leave her room, and all she could think about was her poor baby in pain. I had to be the one to speak to the doctors and figured out a treatment plan. I found out that the insurance was only going to cover 60% of the cost, and we had to pay 40% of the cost out of pocket. My wife and I do fairly well, and we have a house that's nearly paid off. Our own cars and savings, however. The doctors estimated that our son was going to have to undergo treatment for at least 3 years. I calculated and realized that the costs were going to start adding up, so I decided to tell my wife because I realized that we would not be able to do this alone. I wanted to ask her permission for my request of money from my parents, and see, my parents are extremely well off. I would say I grew up in a wealthy household. Despite that, I've worked hard for everything in my life and don't rely on them. I've relied less on them over the past few years because they disregard with my choice to marry my wife. I never considered that I would one day be begging them for money. But here I was. I figured that since they loved their grandson, they would be willing to help out. Imagine my dismay when they tell me that they could not help me. They told me that there was one thing stopping them from helping me, and it was my wife. They tell me if I divorced her, they would help. Of course, I was incredulous. How could they ask me to divorce the love of my life? I informed my parents that they were being cruel and unreasonable. In response, they claimed that they knew what they were doing. They only wanted what was best for me and my son, and they felt that the longer I stayed with this woman, the more I would just lose myself. I struggled to understand their reasoning. My wife has actually made me a better person than I used to be. I'm not as unsympathetic as I used to be. I've learned that there's more things to life than money and status. My parents seem to disagree and feel as if my character development was actually a downgrade. They used this argument to try to get me to divorce my wife. I was quite certain it had to be a prank. There was no way they thought I could just leave her. What sort of monster would I be to leave her while our child was sick? That's when I realized that my wife had been right. When I told her that I was going to ask my parents for money, she begged me to not go. I didn't listen to her. She tells me that they would never help me without asking for something in return. For once, she was the logical one, while I was the sentimental one. I figured that since it was their grandson's life on the line, they would be more sympathetic. For the first time in my life, I was wrong. I had no idea what I was about to be wrong several more times, though. See, after my parents refused to help me, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I picked up extra hours at work, and I even got a weekend job, so I was hardly at home. I worked crazy hours just to save enough money for our son's treatment. My wife supported me through all this, and she did the best that she could to make sure that my life was a lot easier. She made sure that I got as much rest as possible, that I ate healthy, and that I did not burn out. In time, I was able to get money for the first round of my son's treatments. After that, I was able to reduce my shifts a little bit. Even though I'd done so, I realized that I was getting more tired. I was unable to work as efficiently as I used to do before. I feared that I had reached my burnout limit, but I did not want to tell my wife. I didn't want to disappoint her, and she had offered to look for a job, but I could not do that to her. You see, my wife does not have a college education. She actually only got her high school diploma a few years ago. She got pregnant while she was in her senior year of high school, after which she got married to her ex-husband. Their daughter passed away when she was 5, and her husband blamed her for this. He started to mistreat her and abuse her. After a while, she felt that she had enough and divorced him. I met her a few years after her divorce, and we simply fell in love. It took her quite a while to trust me, but now she does. I've been able to show her that love can be pure and it does not have to be ugly. If I were to tell her to go to work, I would never forgive myself. With no experience or education, she would not be able to find something that would be fair to her. She would have to work long hours and possibly be in a toxic work environment. She's already stressed because of her son's condition, and I don't want to increase her stress. Because of this, I've decided that I won't put pressure on her to work. I'm going to have to figure out a way to get rid of this burnout and continue working. Once I get enough money, I'm going to invest it in something. I'm looking for something that has a high yield in a short period of time. Hopefully, that'll help us to cover the rest of the medical expenses. I guess what I need right now is some sort of encouragement. I need to be told things do get better, even if they don't seem like they will. Every day is the same for me. I wake up after a few short hours of sleep. Afterward, I take my lunch that my wife lovingly makes for me, and then I go to work. I come back home after she had slept and warmed my food. Next, I check on my son and hug him goodnight, and then go to check in on my wife. I slept for a few hours and wake up again. It's like I'm stuck in a limbo, I feel my own emotions leaving me, and I'm numb, and I feel like a machine. Because of this, I've started to neglect my wife, and I feel so bad about it. I guess I just need some coping methods of how to get about this. I'm struggling, but I know that it's for the right cause. So I just need a bit of advice from you guys about what I should do in the situation I'm in, and I'm honestly clueless right now. Update number 1. It's a month later. Guys, I just want to first thank you for all the advice. I've been trying to make it easy. I feel my strength returning, but I feel very guilty that I can't do more. My wife has been preventing me from taking on extra shifts. She says that she cannot lose the 2 people that she loves the most in this world. I understand that a loss is a difficult thing for her, as she had to deal with the loss of her daughter. So, because of her, I've tried to take it easy. However, I've been doing some online work while at home. She doesn't know about this and should never know about it, and I'm taking it easy, but I can't sit still and do nothing. Other than that, my wife and I are actually very happy right now. We've just gotten news that the next round of treatment is paid for. My wife informed me that she actually set up a crowdfunding page for our boy. The page has raised enough money for his next round of treatment. There's also a chance that it'll help with the rounds after that, and our son's prognosis is looking very good at the moment. Doctors are confident that he'll be able to back right to the healthy self again. It's unbelievable. It's truly a miracle. I'm over the moon right now, and all the pain and stress that we've been going through over the past few months has been forgotten. I feel like it's been worth it, and it's all been leading up to this beautiful moment. I'm thankful for my wife right now. Even though she could not work, she found a way to help. You see, these qualities are the reason why I married her. I'm honestly the luckiest man in the world to have her as a wife, and she did not allow the fact that she could not work stop her. Instead, she put in extra hours and promoted the crowdfunding page until we had enough money, and I'm just simply full of joy. I'm overwhelmed by the love I have for my wife and son. Today, we had one of the most normal days we've had in a while. I took my first off day in months, and we packed up some food and had a picnic. After that, we took a walk along in the park. It was a very good walk, and we laughed and talked just like in old times. A smile comes to my face as soon as I think of today. I think that it was the best day ever next to my wedding day, and this is the most emotion I've actually felt in months. I'm going to take things easy for a while and be there for my son as he goes through all his treatment. Once I've gotten enough rest, it's back to work for me. I'll be very careful this time, though. I don't want to reach the point of burnout. My wife and son need me. They don't need to have half of me. Thank you so much for the advice and encouragement. I showed my wife this post, and she was very happy with us. It truly means a lot to our little family. Update number 2. Hey guys, it's been a week since my last post. I really want to thank you for the comments that you left. They've really helped us at the moment as we've celebrated our son getting help. Unfortunately, we thought that we were in the clear, but we were not. My parents decided to be spiteful. The way they've acted has upset me and my wife, and we've decided that they have crossed too many boundaries and need to be taught a lesson. You'll not believe what they did. A couple of days ago, they came to my house and they told me that they had heard their grandson was feeling better, so they wanted to see him. I didn't want them anywhere near my house due to what they said when I asked them for help. I tell my wife about their request and how I thought that they were crazy. She was clearly a better person than me because she says that, well, they could see our son. I wasn't a fan of this, but I allowed it. They came to see my son, and with them was my brother. After a few hours of acting like decent people, my father and brother asked to speak to me. We went to the study and left my mom and wife alone, and I did not plan on staying with them long because I don't trust my mom with my wife. When we got to the study, my brother tells me that there was no way for him to say it, but he felt my wife was not being honest about the money. I asked him to stop beating around the bush and tell me what was on his mind. My father told me that he was very suspicious when my son got all the anonymous donations, so they investigated. He tells me that they found out my wife was visiting a popular bar at night, that no respectable woman should have been going to. I asked him what they were trying to, imply about my wife. Well, they had no shame when they suggested what she was doing, something very, very sketchy, just to get the money. So, they went ahead and told me that if I did not believe them, they had to go to the place and see for myself. That's right. Well, they were certain that she was doing something I could not be proud of. My father then tells me that this was the reason why he wanted me to leave her. If I had left her, he would have no trouble paying for my son's treatment. I asked him how his paying for my son's treatment had anything to do with my marriage. He said that he did not like the idea that she was in my life. He felt that, she would use the money for her own selfish gain. Therefore, he did not want her to have access to their money. My brother chimed in and told me to think about it. He said I would regret it when one day the truth was revealed about her. I sat there and listened to their nonsense. The only thing that I could think of was the fact that they were punishing my son because of my wife. That was not okay, by any means. So I just tell them that my wife was a good woman and would never betray me, but I do appreciate all of their concern. Afterward, they left, and I then had a serious conversation with my wife about what I had been told. After the conversation, we decided that something had to change. We could not carry on like this anymore. Lies and secrets would destroy us. Update number 3. Wow, the good thing about dishonest people is that they think everyone else is dishonest. That's how you catch them. I managed to do this a month after my parents came to visit. Of course, I did not believe my parents when they claimed my wife was doing a sketchy job. I went to her and told her everything, and she confessed that she went to the place once or twice. Her friend needed someone to do some costume mending for her, and she offered. That helped her get a few $1,000s to add to the fund. She didn't tell me because she knew I didn't like places like that, and she wanted to explain everything properly, but my parents beat her to it. I thanked her for what she did for us. I then told her that my parents were trying to use this to break us up. Not only that, but they were still determined not to help our son because I was with her. That's when, she said that we had to fool them to get what we wanted. We needed money for the next round of treatments, and they were going to give it to us. Not only that, but they were also going to get exposed for their prejudice against her. We planned to kill 2 birds with one stone. Our plan had 3 phases. The first one was pretending to take the bait. I called my brother one night, telling him that he was right about my wife, and I wanted to leave her. After that, I kept him on the phone while the 2 of us pretended to fight because of her secret little job. I then told her to leave, but she refused. That was the perfect bait for my parents, and phase 2 of the plan began. My wife moved out of the house and went to stay with her parents. I then pretended to be depressed because everything happened. My parents and brother then comforted me and told me that they would be there for me. They said horrible things about my wife and how they never trusted her. The last and final phase of the plan was to get the money from my parents. The part of the plan did not work the way I thought it would work, and I wanted to get money from them and then get back with my wife until I found out their plans for her. When I found out, I realized that I wanted to publicly humiliate them. Because of this, I modified the plan, but my parents had to bear the brunt of it. The whole thing happened after I left my dad's office with the check for my son's medication. Afterward, I left but found something while on my way. In the living room was an envelope with my dad's name titled Matches. So, I decided to open it because I was curious if it had anything to do with my wife. In the envelope were pictures of a woman I recognized. Most of them were young women from good families that my family associated with. The last time I had seen them, they were babies, and I could not comprehend how my parents would even consider these girls to be my match. Most of them were barely fresh out of college. Come on. Well, I had just told them that I was separated and they were already trying to replace my wife. It felt disrespectful. I love that woman. She gave me a child, a home, a life. May the universe help anyone who tries to separate us, as I'm not gonna spare them. I can't wait for when my parents realize what happened because, guys, I'll keep you updated about it. Final update. Hey guys, it's been 3 months since my last update, and here's what's happened in the past few months. You know what I used to hate growing up? The parties that my mother used to throw. They used to be full with well-to-do people who spoke about boring things, and I stopped attending them ages ago. But now that my son's better, I allowed my mom to host one. Of course, she overdid everything. She even invited those potential matches for me. She must have thought the party would be the perfect place to set me up, but I had other plans. Once all the guests were there, I decided that I wanted to make an announcement. Firstly, I thanked my family for paying for my son's medical bills and the rest of his treatment in advance. I watched as my parents beamed with pride. They just basked in their peers' adoration. I let them enjoy it for a moment before I made an announcement. I tell everyone that due to the circumstances of my son's condition, my wife and I split. Everyone made a face of pity, but my parents looked pleased with themselves. I then said that tonight I actually wanted to ask a very special lady to marry me. Everyone gasped. My mom's eyes looked shocked, but her face didn't really show much emotion due to all the Botox. I then invited the special lady to come forward. From the back of the crowd, my beautiful wife appeared. She looked like a vision, wearing a white dress, and I could not take my eyes off her. Our son immediately shouted out in joy when he saw her. They all made a pathway for her to come to me. Once she came to me, she overtook the speech. She introduced herself as my wife, whom I was forced to separate from due to my meddlesome parents. She then played a recording where my father tells me that he was proud of me for leaving her, so now he could pay for my son's treatment. Everyone turned to look at my father in horror. For a man who claimed to be a philanthropist, the recording proved how vain he was in front of people he worked with. Unfortunately for him, most of the guest list were wealthy businessmen who prided themselves in, philanthropy. He lost their respect on that same day. My parents suffered social ruin, which is the worst for people like them who care so much about their status. Nobody wanted to be associated with the people who would let a baby suffer just to prove a point. Most of the people have families of their own and prided themselves in family values. Seeing what my parents stood for was enough for them to cut off all ties with them. It's been 3 months since we've exposed them, and they're still keeping a low profile. Meanwhile, we recently renewed our vows at the same party my mom threw. When we announced it, she was incredulous and left the room, and my dad and brother stuck around to save face, but nobody would even talk to them. Eventually, they all left. The party was a celebration of our love and our son. It made us feel like everything was worth it. All the struggles and sleepless nights were not for nothing, and it goes to show that nothing bad lasts forever and there's always sunshine after the rain. I think that's all from my side. At last, I would just like to thank you guys for all the support, so goodbye.